Question. Hi Kim, thank you for your wisdom. I'm watching your video about the ego, Ego Illusions 1, how the ego distorts your life. You say that the states of consciousness of separation and connected are mutually exclusive. I understand what you mean. However, as I see it, since we need our ego to live in this world of form, and I personally don't hate it or want to get rid of it, but just control it, when we act through the ego because we need to, say in your everyday life job or with other people who are spiritually dead, we need to be or descend to in the separate state of consciousness, don't we? So is not life on earth about dancing with these two states of consciousness, but being aware when you are stepping down? I'm a bit confused as I write this. An example, I don't see Christmas as I used to when I was a kid, and I can now see that it's all a fairy tale and a tool for control created by religions, etc. But my children who are teens now still do and want things the way they have always been. So I do it for them and happy to see them happy. Well, yes, I understand what you mean, but I think what will help you here is to realize that there's ego and there's ego. So the way that I and your ascended masters use the term ego is not the way it's used in traditional psychology, where ego basically is your personality, your sense of self. But ascended master teachings, they used ego as an element in your psychology that was created when you went into the duality consciousness, in other words, into the state of separation. So what the masters have explained is there are 144 levels of consciousness possible on earth. I have a breakthrough video where I talk about this. And when we descend into embodiment, we start the conscious you, which is pure awareness, starts at the 144th level. It takes on a specific illusion, creates a subconscious self basically. Then it goes to the 143rd level, takes on and creates another self, takes on another illusion. And it keeps going till the 48th level of consciousness. So that means that when you took embodiment for the first time, you had descended through all of those levels and taking on all of these cells, one for each level of consciousness. Because this was necessary for us to integrate with the identity body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body. The physical body is very complex. You can see how complex the brain is. So in order to integrate with this, we have to take on all of these cells. And you can call this ego. You can. But it's not the dualistic ego. So you can talk about a higher ego and neutral ego and necessary ego. That's just necessary for you to integrate with the physical body. And and to function in everyday life. But this is not really what I call ego. What I call ego is the dualistic ego. When you go into separation, you become very focused on yourself as a separate being. And then you are creating all of these subconscious selves. Even if you haven't descended very far below the 48th level of consciousness, you're still creating a lot of subconscious cells based on the duality consciousness. And it's these selves, the conglomerate of these selves, that make up what the Ascended Masters call ego. And I think you'll actually probably see that if you keep watching my talks about ego. So I think what will help you there is to make that distinction and realize that what you're talking about, relating to other people, celebrating Christmas with your children. This doesn't require you to take on a dualistic ego. It just requires you to have these selves that helps you integrate with the body and function in the environment we're in here on Earth, which is a very difficult environment. That's why we have to take on so many selves to be able to function here. But see, I think it's also important to realize that, yeah, of course you are going to encounter some people that are in separation. They are below the 48th level. But it doesn't mean that you have to descend to their level to relate to them. You can still interact with them from whatever level of consciousness you are at right now, and still have a relationship with them. So I think, I understand the confusion that you're talking about, but I just think that, for example, you're saying, so is not life on earth about dancing with these two states of consciousness, but being aware when you are stepping down? Yes, that is one way to put it. You have, when you look at spiritual people traditionally, you can see, going back thousands of years in the East, for example, you can see there's always been this difficulty, this tension between being a spiritual person and functioning in the physical world. And there has been this clear tendency in the East, for example, to say that, well, spiritual people withdraw from the world, go into a monastery or a cave in the Himalayas, and they don't interact with the world. But as I've said in many videos, that's an outdated model. In the Aquarian age, we need to be interacting with the world as spiritual people. That's the fastest way to make progress. We need to be in the world, but not of the world, as St. Paul said it. And so it's very true that you could say in the Piscean age, spiritual people withdrew from the world. In the Aquarian age, our challenge is to not go into the worldly consciousness, but still be spiritual, but still be able to interact with the world and be active in the world. And yeah, you can say you're dancing with two states of consciousness, and you can say, I mean, it's true. If it's okay to interact with people who are in a worldly state of consciousness, as long as you know what you're doing and you don't become trapped in it, in reactionary patterns. But the only way to do that is to resolve psychology. So I think we also need to recognize here that when you look at this traditional image, right? So the typical thing in India, for example, here's a guru who at a young age, you can take Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi. At a young age, he realizes he is not meant to live a worldly life, but a spiritual life. He finds his guru, he withdraws from the world and a career, lives in his guru's ashram until he's reached a certain level of spiritual maturity. Then he starts being a guru. He creates his own ashram and organization around him. And he's basically, for the rest of his life, living as this guru who is separated from the world. He has a lot of people that come and receive teachings, but he's still separated from the world. He's not out there working in a factory or at McDonald's to make a living. And this is the traditional view. So the view that's being projected here is that the higher you go in consciousness, the less you can stand interacting with the world. And I just think that's an outdated view. I mean, the higher you go in consciousness, the more you resolve your psychology, the less reactionary patterns you have, the less attachment you have, the easier it will be to interact with people in the world. Because you have no reaction to them. You're not pulled into any games that they might be playing. But that doesn't mean you can't interact with them in a positive way. I mean, I grew up in a certain environment here in Denmark. And my father and my uncle and my grandfather, they were all into duck hunting. And I was very much into it when I was younger. And so when I moved back to Denmark in 2014, I knew some people from back then when I was young. And I started interacting with them because I just felt it was important for me, for my own growth. But I mean, I'm at a point where I talk to these people about things that they are interested in. And I enjoy interacting with them, and I actually feel it gives me a certain balance where I don't get my head in the clouds and I, lose my connection to the real world, so to speak, even though it isn't real. But still, you see what I mean? It's like spiritual people, you can get yourself into this thinking you have to isolate from the world, and this is a sign that you're spiritual. But to me, the sign that you're spiritual is you can interact with the world without being attached, without reacting to it, without feeling it pulls you down. I mean, what's the big deal? You know, why can't you just be friendly and neutral with people without having something going in your mind? Basically, without playing some kind of drama that as a spiritual person you shouldn't be interacting with people in the world, like I've seen many spiritual people have. And I had it myself for years, but I just came to a point where I thought, is it really necessary to carry this baggage along with me?